Hello and welcome to the Pages Pixels podcast, where we talk about new movies every week. I'm Rohan,
And I'm Kirtana.
and today we're going to be talking about Joker 2, which is also called Joker Folie. Deux. And before we get into that movie, let's talk about the first Joker movie, which, if you don't know, it's a spin-off or origin story about Batman's most iconic villain, the Joker. And that first movie was a huge hit. It got 11 Oscar nominations, 2 wins, which were Best Score and Best Lead Actor for Joaquin Phoenix. It also became the first R-rated billion-dollar movie ever. But it was also very divisive.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
I remember I watched it in theaters. I actually, at that point, I was working as an assistant editor, and then I told my boss that I needed to take off or something, and then I went to watch that movie. I really enjoyed the first one.
yeah,
I thought that what it was trying to say, like the social commentary, was solid. I also thought that I honestly didn't have many complaints at all with the first one. I thought the performances were great. I thought it wasn't afraid to be risky, which I really appreciated. So yeah, the first one was great. What did you think?
yeah, I quite enjoyed the first one also. I understand a lot of the issues people had with it, though. And I do think some of the commentary could have been done or could have been handled better, particularly in the third act. I think.
Mhm.
See, when I watched the film, I viewed it as it being a cautionary tale, not about
Right.
mental health, but um about kind of income inequality and
Mhm.
the social divide between the rich and the poor, and how things like mental health services, which is used as an example, but is being cut.
Right.
And I think the whole point of that movie is when people are trampled on constantly,
Mhm.
a spark will happen, and that's how a figure like the Joker can
Mhm.
be born, and
Right.
not just born, but also almost put on a pedestal, even though
Mhm.
he shouldn't be, which is what we
Right.
got at the end. I just
Mhm.
felt that the end of the movie didn't do enough to condemn
Mm.
some of his actions, like the killing,
Right.
and
Right.
but I don't think that was the intent of the filmmakers. I
Right.
think the filmmakers were trying to give us a cautionary tale, and I think some people, like some people that worked for him, that's exactly what happened. But I think many people watched that movie and came out of it and still celebrating the Joker, just like the way that the people in the film were.
Yeah, that's interesting. I know exactly what you mean because there were definitely some people on the internet who were idolizing
Yeah,
this version of the Joker. And I thought that actually made the movie work for me even more because I feel like the commentary that it was trying to give was like coming to life in front of us. And I appreciated being able to see that. No, I mean, a great movie. I was really looking forward to the sequel when I saw the trailers and all the promotional material.
the logline for Joker Folie Deux is s- struggling with his dual identity. Failed comedian Arthur Fleck meets the love of his life, Harley Quinn, while incarcerated at Arkham State Hospital. I feel like that logline is really the first act of the movie. It's not a
Yeah.
logline for the whole movie.
Hmm. I agree. Also, I didn't realize that was the state hospital.
Yeah, I mean
Felt like prison to me.
Arkham. Yeah, so Arkham in the comics, it's Arkham Asylum,
Oh, got
which
it, got it.
uh yeah, that's this it's kind of a big thing,
Mhm.
iconic thing in the comics. They
Mhm.
changed it to, and it is very much like a prison.
Mhm.
Even though it's not their official prison is Blackgate, but most of the Batman villains end up in Arkham.
Mhm.
And then they changed it to call it State Hospital,
Mhm.
which makes more sense in the context of kind of in the real world.
In the beginning, you know how there's this huge like montage of like his life in this
Yeah,
center. The reason I got hung up on like hospital was because during that whole montage, they just like abuse him essentially.
it definitely feels like a prison.
Yeah, I didn't read it as the general hospital, like as a hospital or
Hmm.
anything. I just that was prison, and he was in prison for the riots that he caused.
Yeah,
Um, yeah.
well, and killing someone
Yeah,
or multiple people.
right.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I
you're
think
right.
the
I
way they
think
explained it in the movie was that where Harley Quinn was and where Arthur was, it's the same it's the same overall institution,
mm-hmm,
but they're separated based on like the degree of like how the degree of like what she did, because
mm-hmm,
Harley Quinn, she was an arsonist,
mm-hmm,
uh, and she lit a few things on fire while
right.
Arthur straight up, uh,
Kill people. Yes.
yeah,
Um, that's yeah, that's interesting. I definitely didn't read it like that. But I think outside of that, the world building was pretty solid in this film. It was very easy to understand the world and its rules because mostly the rules were that this society beats down on its underprivileged.
hmm
They really went very far. Like they tried really, really hard to sort of drill that into your head that this is an unforgiving society. Um,
yep,
I think um, just to start off with, I didn't love this film. I can see
neither
what
did
it was
I.
trying to do. Um, but I think some of the choices they made were honestly a little too graphic and entirely too repetitive for me. Um, I feel like the same points could have been made without showing that much abuse on screen.
hmm
This might just be a personal preference taste thing, but it just kind of it kind of created this distance between like I disassociated essentially. It created like a distance between me and the film and the characters, where like I just kind of shut off. And so it was really hard to stay invested in anything in the film when you're already put at a distance in the start.
Yeah, I do think that comes down to personal preference because I also did not like this movie, but it was not for that reason. It was not because I was having issues watching it or it felt too unsettling. Sometimes I feel like sometimes I feel that that's needed. My
Mhm.
issue with this movie was what happens in it. Like
Yeah.
it was the entire like the second and third acts is just a courtroom
Hmm.
drama where they just recap events from the first movie. And then in between those courtroom scenes, you have a couple of musical montages, which is it basically just shows exactly what happened in the scene before, but like
Hmm.
in the form of a song and dance, and then you go back to you could take every single musical set piece out, and
Hmm.
the ending it has no impact on the ending.
Yeah, I agree. I think that was my big problem. I love courtroom dramas. Like it's one of my favorite genres to watch. But I just, I don't think that there was like a story, so to speak, in this film. Like the plot
Yeah,
was very thin. So for it to work as a courtroom drama, I just don't think there was enough material. Like
I
just
agree.
like I can see that every other department other than story like really went out of their way to make like a really good looking film. I just think this might be the third or the fourth time I'm saying this on the podcast, but I think this film was also let down by the screenplay. Um,
I agree.
yeah.
And I
Um,
appreciate what they were going for because I think we talked about it in that first movie. A lot of people came out of the movie worshiping Joker, which I don't
mhm,
think was the intent.
right.
And it really felt like this movie was all about like this movie was all about, hey, Joker is not someone to be worshipped. There's nothing special about this
Mhm,
person. Which that Harley Quinn character, I think she is supposed to be the audience.
mhm,
She she starts out worshiping him, and by the
mhm.
end, she's like, "Yeah, whatever. You're not that special."
Yeah, and see, her arc made sense to me. It made a lot of sense to me because I think, as most of us do with characters we see on screen and out in the world that aren't real, it's very easy to weirdly romanticize them and turn them into this thing that stands for everything we agree and disagree with. It's like a manifestation of everything that we wish we could be, right? And when the reality doesn't match, it's very easy to get disappointed. I know that there was conversation about how the makers intended for this film to be like a way to call out the people that started worshipping Joker after the first one came out. I do think the film succeeded in doing that. I thought that was done very effectively.
hmm I'm gonna push back on it. I do think that comes across clearly. I just think that I just don't think it was done in an effective manner. At least
Mhm.
from a story perspective, it felt lazy. The examples I go to um is when he kisses a lawyer and she immediately pushes him and says, "Hey, you can't do that," and he does it
Mhm.
again.
Yeah.
I get the point.
Um,
They were trying to show, hey, he's not a good guy, but
right.
it just felt like the most lazy possible way.
Um, I will say one thing. I'm glad you brought that scene up because the moment that scene happened, I stopped caring about Arthur. Which, if that's what the filmmakers were going for, great, good on them.
I think
But personally, when in any film, any piece of media, when assault happens, I automatically like write off the person, well, not the victim, obviously, the person who, the perpetrator, as like not worth anyone's time or effort or anything. So when that happened on screen, I shut off again. I was just like, now I don't care if Arthur lives or dies. And while I see now that, okay, that's what they were going for, I don't know if that's effective when that character is the protagonist. I feel like you kind of
right.
want your audience to be at least a little bit invested in your protagonist's story, right? Um, yeah, I think that was one of
And
my biggest issues. After that, again, like I could not care less how the film went.
yeah,
Despite that, it never recaptured me.
and that's where I think there was an opportunity here
Mhm,
because it makes sense as to, hey, maybe don't do that with your protagonist, especially not super early on into the movie.
mhm,
Uh, that's where I think this movie. I think if I were to restructure this movie,
mhm,
I would make this movie about Harley Quinn.
mhm,
I focus on her and her arc because for me the arc didn't work for her.
mhm.
I think it worked in for me it works in theory, but I
Right.
don't necessarily feel it. And I
Mhm.
think what this movie could have done better is if we were to really if she was the point of view character,
Yeah.
and if I were to basically if I were to rewrite this movie, I would first of all I would not make Harley Quinn. Uh, I would not give her the story that they gave her in this. I actually think the story that she has in the comic books is a little bit more compelling or
Mhm.
compelling. Where if you don't know, she is his psychiatrist.
Right.
She and he then corrupts her and uh, turns her just like him. So I think a more interesting version of this movie would be you keep that
Yeah.
and he escapes Arkham,
Yeah.
and then in the movie he is trying to turn her into him
Yeah.
to kind of show, hey, there's not much difference. You're just like me and all that. And
Mhm.
then I think now whatever that route may be, I would not go the Killing Joke route. It's a little too
Yeah.
graphic, but
Mhm.
at the end, if she rejects him, I think that would be even more powerful, and it also give a theme to the audience of hey, there is like I'm going to use the word society. I'm trying not to use it, but with this movie, but yeah,
Mhm.
like society has issues. There's all this, but there are other ways to make to fix it as opposed
Mhm.
to resorting to murder.
Yeah. I think that would be so much more of an interesting version of the story. I remember when you first told me about the about like Harley Quinn's like comic real story backstory
Mhm.
whatever. It's so much cooler.
Yeah.
I think it adds so many
Also,
layers that I
mhm.
maybe missed in this film.
Yeah. Also, it's just an accomplished psychiatrist who was reduced in the adaptation to
Mhm.
a girl who plays with fire.
Yep, girl who plays with fire with rich parents. Yeah, very
Mhm.
unidimensional. I think that character,
Yeah.
unfortunately. Um, yeah, so I mean, obviously the story didn't work for me. I will say that the performances did.
Mhm.
I thought the performances were great. I thought Joaquin Phoenix's physical transformation was scary, as it was intended to
Yep.
be. I think everything about it, because I feel like even his body language changed quite a bit for the second one, and that was really cool.
Mhm.
I thought, again, I thought it like I think everything else really helped me like buy into the world, which is usually what I look for when I start looking at other elements of the film, cinematography, lighting, makeup, all of that stuff. Is it keeping me within the world? And I think
Yeah.
everything else in this film did that.
Mhm. Yeah. I'm not as high on the performances as you are,
Mm-hmm.
simply because I think, I mean, like I think Joaquin's a great actor. Don't get me wrong. I just I just was not invested in his performance this time around, and I think that's because even though his delivery and everything is awesome,
Mm-hmm.
the lines that he's reading is not like I just don't care. So it's hard for me to get invested in a character and by extension that actor's performance
Yeah.
when the story's not working.
Yeah. You know how they say like you can't like you know how they say like it's hard to fix a broken product with marketing.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, the story isn't great. Like you can parcel it, however, it's going to be a hard sell.
Right.
You said you didn't like the musical sequences?
I mean, I think they were visually they were great,
Hmm.
and all that. I think that the set design was the production design was like was great. I really, especially I think that very first musical sequence where they're dancing on a rooftop.
Yeah,
Uh, yeah, I just again, there's so many of them, and you can cut every single one.
yeah. I think I
And
did get tired from them for sure. Yeah.
yeah, they just don't serve much of a purpose.
Hmm. Yeah. Although it's an interesting idea, maybe if they redid the film, there is something to explore there. Um,
Hmm.
There are a lot of people who believe that this film was made as a troll to the fans of the first film.
mhm.
Do you think that this is the case or not?
Yes, I think it is. It's definitely the case. Um, yeah, no,
Yeah,
I think that's what they
um,
did.
maybe troll is a strong word, but we had kind of mentioned that a lot of this movie felt like, hey, if you didn't get what the first one was actually about, this is it.
Yeah, yeah. Mm. No, that was. I appreciated that they did that. I feel
Mhm.
like a film like this will only benefit from all the clarity they can give. This person, who's clearly not a good person, is being celebrated on screen. They're trying to say this behavior doesn't deserve to be rewarded, but maybe there wasn't enough clarity with that message in the first one because it did result in this anti-hero being celebrated, right? So I feel like if they made the second one literally as a response to clarify the message behind that, like that's worth it because again, like films that have such strong social commentary and such, I want to say that like a film like this or like it really does kind of like it's trying to inspire action in a way, or it can be read that way. So when that's the case, then I think it's important to present clarity if possible. We all know that like any piece of media has like the inherent power to like create change or influence minds. It um yeah, at least I think it's a filmmaker's responsibility to just make sure that what you're putting out is being received like well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but to build on that, you got to make sure it's good
Yeah.
because if the sequel ends up being not good, just like this one,
Hmm.
then people aren't going to go watch it. First movie made
Yeah.
over $1 billion. This movie,
Hmm.
204 million was the worldwide gross.
Oh wow.
Uh,
I mean it's a
so
big number but nowhere close.
yeah, a fifth of the people
Hmm.
that watched that first one watched
Hmm.
this one.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very interesting. Yeah, no, I mean I think quality speaks above all else. Um
Yeah,
yeah.
Could this be a career killer for Todd Phillips?
No, I don't think so.
I mean, The Hangover 2 did not kill his career, so
No, I also think that I think once you've directed like a DC movie, it's very hard to.
especially if it made $1 billion and got
Yeah,
all those nominations.
yeah. I think you're afforded a lot more mistakes than one bad musical if you're at that stage in your career.
All right, time for standout elements. So, if you've been watching, you know that we've always been doing standout scenes. We're deciding to change that up a bit, where we're going to focus on one element of the movie that really works for us, or if it doesn't work for us, highlights a broader issue that can be a performance, a scene, line of dialogue, whatever.
Mhm.
Uh, so, what would your standout element with Joker 2 be?
I'm gonna say cinematography.
Ah, you
Um,
stole mine.
it was phenomenal. I agreed with basically every choice they made.
Yeah.
Um, it really did enhance like I mean, the performances obviously, but just everything, even dialogue, like where they chose to place, what shots, it felt very intentional, and I really appreciate that in anything I watch. None of it felt like a happy coincidence, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it did feel like effort went into building story through that.
Mhm.
Do you want to build on that? You want to build on that?
Yeah. It's just every single shot in this movie.
Mhm.
It's what you said. It feels intentional when, especially when we have big studio blockbusters, that it really just feels like it's about getting the shot, regardless of what it looks like. They're just like, all right, set the camera down, actor, say your lines. All right, you got
Mhm.
it. Cool, let's move on. This really feels like they took their time to light
Mhm.
and block out every single moment. Visually, I think this movie is awesome. I think script lets it down, but
Yeah.
the visuals do enhance this film.
Yeah, I agree. I also, especially with the musical numbers, I thought they were shot just extremely well. You
Oh yeah,
always like visually, you could easily tell that this was like a dream sequence of sorts, without it being like too over the top, which I really enjoyed.
and that's why they were able to create such a good trailer. Because when you have amazing cinematography and you're not
Yeah.
giving the whole story of
Yep.
the movie, it's
Yeah.
a lot easier to create an awesome trailer.
I agree. No, that's very true. The trailer definitely was more impressive than the film, as is
I
the
agree.
case mostly. But
Okay, all right. Time for our scores. As a reminder, or if you're new, we do our scores on the script coverage scale of pass, consider, and recommend. This isn't an actual recommendation, it's just the way we score things. So, with that said, how would you score Joker 2?
I'm gonna say this is a weak consider. Um, yeah, that's really it. How about you?
Yeah, I'm going to also give it a weak consider. I think this movie is one of the most disappointing movies of the year, if not the biggest disappointment of the year.
Mhm.
But the reason why I wouldn't give it a straight up pass is because I think the cinematography was beautiful. The
Mhm.
score was great. And then I like the intent of this movie almost acting like this movie kind of trolling the audience who loved that first
Mhm.
movie, or at least loved the character
Yeah,
in that first movie. Uh,
yeah.
I thought that was an interesting choice.
Mhm. Yeah. And then I mean I do remember, I think you told me the story of like why Joaquin Phoenix ended up in the second one. Um, like he was I from what I hear, he was originally offered Doctor Strange, but he didn't want to do like a studio franchise multi-part
Oh
film.
yeah.
Uh, and
Hmm.
then he did Joker because they offered it to him as a standalone. And then it made
Yep.
$1 billion. So they went into the second one. Are there any other films you watched, maybe in the same space, same tone, anything similar to Joker 2 that you'd like to recommend?
Yeah. So I've been watching The Penguin on
Hmm.
HBO. It's it's funny. It's a show about a different Batman villain.
Hmm.
Uh, and yeah, it is great. And specifically, the reason I'm recommending it is I think one of the episodes, I want to say episode 4, focuses on another character named Sophia Falcone,
Hmm.
and that one episode kind of does the entire plot of Joker 2, but it's so much better. Like,
Wow. Okay.
did they do that? And it's just Arkham is more interesting.
Hmm.
Sophia is a much more interesting character than Arthur.
Hmm.
Uh, so yeah, check out the Penguin.
Yeah. I've been hearing a lot about it. Is it over? Has the whole show streamed now? I mean, has the whole season streamed now, or
I
are there still a
believe
couple
there's
of
one more
episodes?
episode.
Okay, yeah. So I'm gonna wait until the end of that so that I can just binge it. Um, with an unhealthy amount of screen time. But I am going to recommend this Tamil film called Kala. It is a Rajnikant film, and it's pretty old. It's from the director Pa Ranjit. It's very similar in the sense of the social commentary. It talks about privilege versus lack of privilege. I think it talks about this like wealth gap and like um, discrimination and all of that very tactfully. And I really enjoyed watching it, and it's definitely worth a watch. Yeah. What else have you been watching?
So I watched Grave of the Fireflies recently for the first time.
Mhm.
It's an animated movie. I believe it's a Ghibli movie, although it's not Miyazaki.
Mhm.
And I had heard a lot about how this is one of the best war movies, but also one of the saddest movies ever made.
Mhm.
And yeah, everything you've heard about this movie is absolutely true. This movie is great, but
Mhm.
extremely, extremely depressing and sad,
Mhm.
uh, which happens to be my favorite type of movie. Um, yeah, judge me all you want. But yeah, great movie. It's on Netflix. I think they just added it a few weeks ago. Highly
Mhm.
recommend it.
Great. This week I watched Anchorman, the first one. Um, it's hilarious. I think it was when I first moved to the US. I was in like one of my classes in school, and somebody was like, "Oh, like you should watch this movie." And initially, I was like, "Oh, I don't know if it's my kind of comedy, whatever." But I watched it, and I loved that movie so much. So I just revisit it from time to time. Yeah, that's what I've been watching.
Nice, nice.
Yeah.
I've actually never seen it.
And it's so
I know.
good. Anyway,
Okay, I'll
right.
definitely check it out.
With that, we come to the end of this week's episode of the Pages to Pixels podcast. I'm Keerthana,
I'm Rohan.
and we'll see you again next week with a brand new episode. Thank you for tuning in.
Thank you.